Good morning, everyone. We are now live for our event today. Thank you so much for joining us for the American Academy of Pediatrics Nevada Chapter Virtual Walk with a Doc Kids Time. I'd like to welcome all of our parents and kids, fellow practitioners to our September virtual walk. My name is Dr. Lily Hadaji, and I am a pediatrician here in Las Vegas, as well as the Nevada chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics Walk with a Doc coordinator. For 5 years now, the Nevada AAP chapter has been meeting every second Sunday of every month. We coordinate kid-friendly talks on a variety of pediatric health topics and then enjoy an outdoor walk together. It's a really great way to get outdoors, learn important information about the health of our kids, and have the opportunity to ask a local pediatrician or pediatric specialist any questions. Our chapter also helps coordinate this event for the Reno community. We normally join at the Springs Preserve's outdoor venue most of the year, and then during the hotter months, we gather at Mount Charleston at the Visitor Gateway to escape the heat. Since we're keeping our distance today to protect ourselves and our community from this pandemic, we're holding a virtual walk with the doc this morning, live streamed online. For our talk today, we are really happy to welcome Dr. Lisa Durrett, who will be speaking to us about the importance of caring for yourselves and your children. Dr. Durrett is an assistant professor and fellowship director of child and adolescent psychiatry and behavioral health at UNLV. She is board certified in both child and adolescent and general psychiatry and is an important advocate for children's mental health in our community here. As Dr. Durrett starts her talk, I really encourage all of you to use the chat box to talk to each other and also ask any questions that she can answer at the conclusion of her talk. Dr. Durrett, we are ready when you are.
Thank you, Dr. Hadaji, and thank you all for having me this morning. Good morning. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about stress, resiliency, and what you can do as parents, caregivers, and people involved in the lives of kids. So the world is weird. We all accept that right now. And we know that as a society, we're all dealing with the collective stress of COVID and everything else that's happening in the world that's stressful. And so what's important for us is to keep in mind that stress is one piece of the pendulum, but the other piece on the other side of the swing is resiliency, which can help mitigate the impact of stress. So I'll talk for a few minutes about that. I'll talk about some of the unique elements that are happening to our kids relative to COVID, and then most importantly, talk about what we can do. So resiliency. Resiliency is defined as that ability to recover quickly from difficulties, or our ability to adapt and cope with stress in a way that makes us better able to manage future stresses. And this piece is really important because what we can learn and take away today and what we can teach our kids today can be carried forward throughout the rest of their lives. So what's our role as parents, adults, caregivers? We are modeling for kids how we deal with stress, how we mitigate our own stress through our own resiliency. And kids around us are sponges. They're absorbing every little thing that they see us do, think, and say, and they're learning from us. And so simple things that we can do for our own resiliency can transcend into their acceptance and understanding of resiliency. Things like following a healthy diet, not dieting for weight loss, but eating the rainbow, fruits, vegetables, etc. Exercising, like this walk. Exercise is so critically important for mental health. Getting good sleep, having hobbies, activities, things that nourish our spirit, nourish our soul, having interpersonal connections, friends, family, people that you reach out to so that as adults, you're not alone and you're modeling to your kids the importance of those personal connections. And then teaching a language for describing feelings. When we talk about the social emotional learning theory, and we talk about the importance of that education, teaching our kids the full spectrum of language to describe every emotional state, to teach our kids that every emotion, every feeling is normal. How you choose to act upon those emotions can come into question at times, but being able to express them, have a language for them as an adult, be able to show that we can have that capacity. So we know that our safe stable, and nurturing relationships are our key to modeling and setting the stage for our kids to develop really good basic social emotional skills to promote their resiliency. And as adults, if we can grab our oxygen masks first, do these tasks to model and show it for our kids, we save ourselves and we save our kids. So with that, I want to shift for just a second to talk about, well, what are we seeing these days in kids? We're hitting 2 years now just about of COVID. And this is this new chronic traumatic stress that's happening to us at a societal level. And we know that just things haven't been quite the same. The first rule we know is that things are different and things are unknown, and we still don't know what the end result's going to be. But we know that kids have some inherent resiliency. And as I said earlier, we as adults can model and teach our kids how to have even greater sense of resiliency. But keep in mind, every element of our kids' lives have been disrupted. Our own lives as adults and our kids' school, extracurricular activities, their summer activities, their family life, the exposures that they're getting to the news, social media, friends, family, etc. All of those elements are impacted by stress, by potential trauma. And this is where, again, keeping a sense of health and resiliency is important to dampen the impact of that traumatic effect. So as I said, we know kids have lost a lot of structure. Now that they're back in school, it's better, but school's not the same. They're having to wear masks. Never in life have kids gone to school with masks on, and it's just the norm right now. And we know that some of the support services have fallen off and are slowly coming back on. So we know that the lives of our kids are a little bit different. But what's interesting is for some kids, they did great in remote learning. And there are some kids that are struggling going back to school. There's other kids that cannot wait to re-engage with their friends. And so as parents and caregivers, this is where it's so important to keep your eye on the ball. What's happening to our kids? Are you seeing any changes in their mood and their behavior? And not just one day, but chronic day after day. If things are significantly different, that might tell you need to ask your pediatrician, ask your family practice doc, what's going on with my kid? If you're seeing changes in their sleep patterns and their behavior and their levels of social interaction, that could be concerning. And again, it's for us to model our own levels of social interaction, our own healthy sleeping, our own healthy eating, and then seeing if that's being followed by our kids. If you start to see decline in academic function, isolation, self-injurious behavior, any of that could be really concerning. And if that happens, it is critical to reach out. So coming back to what can you do? There's a beautiful model that is talked about in the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, and that's the PRN framework: to pause, reset, and nourish. So what does this mean? This is really practical tips for all of us. Pause. Pause is checking in with ourselves, taking a moment to slow down, check in with our body, check in with our mind, see how we are, and to show our kids how to do this. There can be some really simple techniques for this pause. To sit still, take a slow, deep breath in through our nose, expand our abdomen, let it out, to slowly stop and reflect. How are we feeling? What are we seeing around us? Are we having intense emotions like frustration, anger? Are our kids experiencing similar? We take that pause, see where things are, and then we can have a moment to reset. And reset doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be drawn out. It's doing something to get yourself on a different trajectory. So it might be as simple as exercise. Get outside, take a walk, do a hobby, read a book, watch a short, funny video. There's positives to social media. There's negatives of social media. Watching some funny TikToks might not be a bad thing in these moments. Recognizing that you're not in a good place, understanding that that might impact your children, and just getting yourself back on a more positive track. And then the next step is nourish, doing things that nourish your mind, body, soul, and spirit. So could that be journaling, writing some positive affirmations, doing something fun, taking a moment to play a card game with your kid, to just go outside, to nourish the soul. Now, pause, reset, and nourish can be so important towards building resiliency. So as I said in the beginning, we've been sharing this traumatic stress for quite some time now, pushing 2 years. But in the face of stress and in the face of trauma, if we're able to build resiliency, it can help mitigate the impact of trauma, and it has lifelong benefit for helping us better navigate trauma in the future. So finally, the tips of what you can do to help, again, manage that resiliency, model for your kids, or to prioritize relationships, to just join a group, be with a group of friends, be with a group of peers, see your child being involved in some sort of social group. To take care of your body, because taking care of the body helps take care of the mind and overall wellness. And so that's, again, diet, exercise, and sleep. Practice mindfulness. Just a couple of deep breaths may be all you need on a daily basis to just bring it back in. To try and avoid constant exposure to negative outlets. So a little bit of news is fine. 24/7 news might become overwhelming. And then be proactive. Watch your children. Watch your friends. If you see somebody struggling, reach out. Something as simple as, hey, I noticed that. What can I do to help? It can be so therapeutic towards getting somebody back on track. And keeping yourself in a healthy perspective can go miles towards both you and your child being in a healthier place. So with that, we've talked about the impact of resiliency, the impact of COVID, and what we can do to really strengthen our own resiliency. And with that, I would love to answer any questions. And I hope all of you take the time today to take a deep breath, imagine how you're feeling, think about how you're feeling, and then do one proactive activity to help promote your own resiliency. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durrett. That was really great and informative for ourselves, myself, and also our kids too. So I have a few questions from our audience. The first one being a parent asking, I'm concerned about behavioral and mood changes in my child. Should I seek evaluation with my pediatrician first, or go directly to a mental health professional like a psychologist or psychiatrist?
That's a really good question. And I start by thinking about, who do you have the best relationship with? Typically, we've known our pediatricians since our kids were babies. And so that relationship that you have with your pediatrician, with your pediatric practice, is most likely the best place to start. And then in your visit with your pediatrician, you can discuss, I've got these concerns, and you and your pediatrician can figure out what the next best step is. Because the next best step may not necessarily require going to see a psychiatrist, going to see a psychologist, but it might be something as simple as, what are some socially proactive activities that we can get your kid involved in? What's happening with your kid's sleep? Let's look at their overall function. And so not everything needs to rise to the level of seeing a psychiatrist, but if you have the concerns of a change in your child's mood or behavior, absolutely get on the phone and get into your pediatrician.
Great, thank you for your recommendations. Our next question, Dr. Durrett, is, can increased hours on social media lead to anxiety or depression, or both?
That is a tough question. So it's interesting because the world the kids are growing up in is different than the world that perhaps we grew up in. And we know that adolescents' developmental tasks involve identifying more with their peers than with their parents. They're there to form their identity. That's the developmental task of an adolescent. And we know that social media is the primary way in which teens interact and engage with their peers. There's really little distinction amongst a lot of kids between their in-person friends and their social media friends. The two are very much conflated. And so these formations of healthy social relationships are very important towards healthy evolution of life, either way. University of Southern California Social Work School has done some really cool research looking at, okay, what is the role of healthy social media behavior and what does that have to do with youth connections? And what they're finding is, for many youth, social media connections are great and aren't causing any significant difficulty. But specifically, are more vulnerable youth, more vulnerable to anxiety, depression, non-suicidal self-injury like cutting or hurting oneself to express pain and stress and distress in themselves. They have found that amongst that cohort of adolescents, they're gravitating more towards unhealthy social media influences. And they're finding groups and connections within social media that sometimes promote, normalize, even encourage maladaptive behaviors. And so in our more vulnerable youth, they have been found to gravitate towards less healthy connections in social media, whereas our healthy youth seem to be unaffected by it. So as a parent, what do you do? As a clinician, what do you do? If you have a youth who is at high risk because of anxiety, depression, maladaptive behaviors, it's really important to have some idea of what are their social media connections? What are they doing on social media? Who are they communicating with? And asking those questions. You know, as a pediatrician in your office saying, tell me about your social media profile. Who do you talk to on social media? What are you doing on social media? Just to get some idea, because we need to recognize that that group of vulnerable kids are not going in an optimal direction.
Great, very, very informative. Thank you. Our last question, Dr. Durrett, is what are signs of mood disorders, anxiety, depression? I know you touched upon it a bit in your talk, but that a parent should look for in their child.
Great question. So piece number one, change. But what are signs of depression as an example? So in kids, especially our younger kids, depression sometimes is more manifested as anger and irritability than sadness and withdrawal. It's more of an older adolescent adult demonstration. So the alteration in mood, sadness, irritability, anger for greater than 2 weeks, and then combine that with abnormalities in sleep, either sleeping excessively, difficulty falling asleep, disrupted sleep, loss of interest, a kid who used to have hobbies and activities that no longer wants to do those things. A kid who seems to be preoccupied by a lot of thoughts of guilt and negative self-talk. A kid who typically had been a rather energetic kid that all of a sudden just seems to be blah, losing energy. A kid who's struggling in school. And so we know that depression and anxiety can both impact one's ability to concentrate and focus. And things that you think might be academic problems could be a manifestation of depression or anxiety. Kids whose appetite changes, either they're eating excessive amounts of food or they're just not eating at all. And then finally, kids who talk about wanting to end their life, not wanting to wake up in the morning, giving their toys or their possessions away, thinking about suicide or even attempting suicide, which is the worst scenario. All of those can be symptoms of depression. With respect to symptoms of anxiety, like I talked about, the abnormalities in concentration, the struggles there can happen. But kids with anxiety oftentimes don't say, I'm worrying a lot, but they'll present as having somatic complaints. So a lot of tummy issues, tummy aches, especially on Sunday nights before school starting, headaches, physical symptoms that are happening in a recurrent fashion that maybe you work up medically and there's no medical cause for them, could be anxiety. The kids who ask for reassurance over and over and over and over again, oftentimes are more anxious kids. And so as you see any of those types of behaviors in your kid, please reach out to your pediatrician, ask for help, because it's the best place to start. Your pediatrician knows you best.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Durrett, for your very informative talk today on the importance of mental health in our children. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. It's time for us all to now go on our outdoor walk. So as we stop the live feed, I really encourage everyone to take the time to enjoy some physical activity outside, hopefully finding a time during the day that is cooler. It would be great to see any photos of yourselves walking together that can be posted on the Nevada AAP Twitter feed at AAP Nevada. Make sure to walk for at least 20 minutes, bring water and sunscreen, and maintain social distancing and wear a mask. We are keeping up to date on the latest recommendations from the CDC and American Academy of Pediatrics, and we'll let you know when it is safe to resume in-person talks. Please make sure to take your kids 12 and older for their COVID-19 vaccinations. And now that we're in flu season, their flu vaccines for 6 months and up. And for kids 12 and under, check with your pediatrician to ensure they are all up to date on their childhood immunizations. Our next virtual Walk with a Doc will be held October 10th at 10 a.m. and we hope to see you there again. Please stay safe and healthy and have a great walk. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.